what we will often find is customers been onboarded, they're using the service, but have never been billed. It's multiple millions. Biggest surprise probably was in the energy sector, which amounted to about £80 million.
Anita Dougall started her data consultancy, Sagacity, all the way back in 2005. Since then, she's worked with some of the UK's biggest brands, spinning their data into business gold.
What Sagacity holds is a really strong database, one of the strongest databases on the UK population. Well, the key in all of that is really understanding the customer and getting the engagement. So if James likes a letter, let's send James a letter. If James likes SMS, let's send James an SMS.
How do you know if I like a letter? Lots of people, I guess, are giving permission all the time and accepting cookies and all that stuff. That's frightening.
Every company has a debt challenge where customers are being billed but not paying. Often our clients are worried about customer experience and complaints off the back of being chased.
So they're worried that you might go chasing these individuals that haven't paid. How do you make sure you don't upset them?
Welcome to All About Business with me, James Reed, the podcast that covers everything about business, management, and leadership. Every episode, I sit down with different guests who've bootstrapped companies, masterminded investment models, or built a business empire. They're leaders in their field, and they're here to give you top insights and actionable advice so that you can apply their ideas to your own career or business venture.
Anita, thank you so much for coming to talk to me this afternoon on All About Business. I've been looking forward to this conversation very much because it's all about data, isn't it? And you are the sort of leader in data services and data analysis. And we hear so much about data. People are always saying you need to know more about data. The sort of secret is in the data. But you're a person who actually does stuff with data. And your business, Sagacity, makes it its job to help companies use data much more effectively. I want to understand, what is it you do first and how do you do it?
What we focus on at Sagacity really is improving that return on investment for businesses. That's one of our biggest things that we look for data. You know, this data, you could do security data, you could do quality on data, you can do return on investment or growth, etc. So it's such a broad topic. What we focus on is really increasing either that growth for companies or really helping with that customer engagement and segmentation. So that's the facets at Sagacity that we deal with. So if I really take you through some real examples, we will help companies with challenges on growth to really help acquisition. So AA is a recent example. You can go onto the sagacity.co.uk website and have a look at the testimonial where they really wanted to understand the customer and grow their customer base, mainly through cross-sell. The challenge they put to us was they've got customers on lots of systems and different products, and they need a mechanism of bringing that together, but they need to bring that together really quickly. And most companies had advised them that it was a 3-year journey to do that, given how vast the AA is.
So this is the AA that was described as the fourth emergency service.
Yes.
So people who come and fix your car. But you're talking about cross-selling.
Yeah.
So they do insurance and other products.
Yeah. So they do various
and you're
products.
helping them. But what their sort of motor support database is separate from their insurance database. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So how do you approach a problem like that to help them build their business?
So what we did was understand how many systems they've got with data in there on the customer and what systems have what products. So what we put together was a solution then that brought together what we call a single customer view. So bringing all that data together rather than having to work each system and change each system, was actually build a solution over the top, what we call single customer view, that takes the feeds from all those various systems, normalizes the data, i.e. so we understand it, we standardize that data. We join that data. So we might have James Reed, for example, appearing in different ways. It might be with an S, without an S, with one E, two E's, etc.
Yeah, you can spell Reed in lots of different ways. It's only a one syllable name, which is very confusing.
Yeah.
But that's a sort of, I mean, you joke about that, but that's a problem with data, isn't it? Because little changes, little differences can confuse and lead to the wrong outcomes and conclusions.
Yeah.
So the AAA example is interesting. You used the term cross-selling. And this has always been a sort of goal in business, to you have a customer that uses one of your services but not another. How do you get them to use both? And I've found that in my career really difficult. They might want, because they're very clear what they want and they're buying one thing and they don't necessarily want it. Have you found that this sort of greater knowledge of data, or this forensic examination of data, has actually enabled that successfully? I mean, what was the AA's journey? Have they made more cross sales than they were in the past? Is that actually working? Because that would suggest this is a change in the weather on that subject.
Well, the key in all of that is really understanding the customer and getting the engagement right. So that means engagement in terms of tone of the communication. It's the type of communication. So if James likes a letter, let's send James a letter. If James likes SMS, let's send James an SMS. So this is where we utilise our data to add that personalisation so that increases that engagement. So there's less waste in that customer contact, and also you're not irritating the customer by just sending them anything you feel like.
How do you know if I like a letter, though?
So we have preferences that are captured by you in some kind of mechanism. So it might be you've responded to mail, so that might be recorded. It might be that you've responded to digital communication, so that's recorded. And wherever we get these, if you imagine bits of information, we're continually building that profile of the customer. So we have really clear data at individual level as well as demographic, sort of geographical level, on how customers like to be contacted. And we do that either by real data or modelled data. And it's really accurate.
So you mentioned you help companies build their businesses through, I guess, added sales. But you also mentioned that you help them with debt and the financial side of things. How does that work? What do you do?
Yeah. So we use data across the customer life cycle. So right from prospecting, acquisition, billing or in life, right the way to debt collection. So we will use data, if we just take billing and customer management for a minute. I think a bit surprising, so sometimes this can be a hard sell, but we've never been to a company where they don't have billing issues, ever. And what do we mean by billing issues? So we will look at data, we will look at process, and we will look at people and join them up. And often that billing journey has a cross-functional element in companies. And that cross-functional element means that a customer's joined and that is dealt with by one department. The billing happens by another department. Yeah. So you've got all these different departments and silos in companies. What we're doing through the data is understanding the process and the people, but bringing it together through data. And what we will often find is things like customers that have never been billed. Now, that's always a surprise to most companies. So they've been onboarded, they're using the service, and this is, a good example in telecoms, for example. We do this, and we do it in agriculture.
So some people aren't getting their telephone bill.
Yeah, or water bill, or electricity bill, or...
They're not going to ring up and say, hey, you haven't sent me the bill, are they?
No, they're not. Funny that.
I suspect, yeah. So you're surfacing those.
So we're surfacing this.
You find that a lot, do you?
Yeah, it's multiple millions in larger companies. And even in the small companies, it's hundreds of thousands.
But how does that happen? Because it's not been passed successfully from one department to another.
Yeah, so it happens. So some of it's through system. So, for example, I've acquired 100 customers, but only 95 have reached the billing system because there's been some exceptional problem along that system journey and nobody's really picked up the exceptions or understood them or processed them. So whilst the customer's receiving the service, they're not receiving the bills.
So you sort of run a cross check where you look at all the customers and look at all the bills.
Yeah,
and say,
look at the bills.
These ones are missing.
Yeah.
And do some customers get billed more than once?
Yes.
So the reverse is
we look at overbilling.
Some people are getting overbilled.
Yeah, we look at overbilling and underbilling because with regulated industries, which is what we operate in, both of those things are a problem. There are fines for businesses that are overbilling, and there are obviously challenges with revenue with underbilling.
Sure, losses. Yeah.
And losses that are experienced. But the other thing that is of interest for most companies is we'll also go back to contracts and look at what the contract says versus what should happen. And you would be surprised how many times they are not aligned. And if I give you an example to bring it to life, it might say that if you join X, you will get a discount of Y for 12 months. When we go and run the data, that discount is still running on those customer accounts. So it was never taken away at month 12. Now, we're in a volume business. This is big money. Or it says you've got to buy these 3 services for you to get the discount. So the customer joins with the 3 services and then cancels one and hasn't got the right really to have those discounts. But they're never removed by the system because the system's not been configured, but then no governance is in place to go and check that either forensically.
So you're really digging into the detail, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like there's a huge amount of money at stake in these big organisations, right there in the detail, in the data. Yeah.
And that's the biggest issue, is putting the data across what should happen to what does happen.
Right, and they're never the same.
No, never is the word. We've never found a business with that yet.
So interesting. So none of them are doing what they think they're doing. They're all doing something different.
Yeah.
We're delighted that you're watching this episode. Please hit the subscribe button if you'd like to receive more insights and actionable advice that will help your business and or career.
And then I think just moving on from billing, you've got the debt journey. Now, every company has a debt challenge, and that could be...
What's a debt challenge? Anita?
So this is where customers are being billed. So our clients have their customers, B2B or B2C, being billed but not paying. And that could be they're not paying at all, or it could be they're paying really slowly. Either of those, as we know, present a challenge to businesses.
So are you seeing that more and more? Is that an increasing phenomena that people aren't paying or struggling to pay?
Yes, it's definitely increasing as the bills are rising. We all know...
You talk about energy here.
Well, any industry, really.
Well, all prices are rising.
All prices are rising.
They're not going
generally
down in many places.
Yeah. So recently in the press, water... energy have taken a real hit on that, but all prices are rising. And as prices are rising, the income is not probably rising proportionately for some people, particularly those at the financially vulnerable end of the scale, that starts presenting challenges. And what we're really doing is helping our customers, so our clients, proactively reaching out to those customers and offering support. So there is a lot of support available to customers that is untapped.
What sort of things are you talking about?
So if, for example, your income is below a certain threshold, for argument's sake, 20,000, you could contact a water company, and there are packages where you can get up to 30-40% discount off the bill. Now, many people don't know how to tap into that or feel embarrassed to tap into that. We did a survey recently, and only 6% of customers knew that there was actually support available to them.
That they could get a discount or reduced bills.
They could get discounts.
So it's worth making that call anyway.
Yeah.
But do people pick up the phone when you make that call? Because some of these companies are quite hard to get hold of.
Yeah, I mean, they do. There's sometimes specific lines, or you can write in. So this topic's taken very seriously by our clients, and we see that across the board. There's a big push from Sagacity for companies to proactively help customers, because the other thing our survey extrapolated was that customers are embarrassed to ask for that support.
Right.
So they don't feel comfortable. So what we're doing through profiling and the data we hold is helping those customers segment that customer base and reach out proactively where we can see people that need help, because we've got household income, for example, in our data.
Right.
So there's a big push from our perspective that we should be helping those customers. But that's only one end of the scale.
So, but where people are entitled to these discounts or support,
and
they should be getting
tablets.
it, shouldn't they? Yeah. I mean, that's the...
Yeah, and money's there,
and that's
available.
about
And
using the
companies
data.
companies want to use it, but companies have done it the other way, where they wait for somebody to contact them to ask, and aren't really proactively reaching out to that.
And you can help them do the other, way.
That. Yeah. But then...
Well, what about people who just don't want to pay because they don't want to pay?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That must be another segment.
Yeah, there's other segments throughout. So that's one segment, but you go all the way through to people just not paying. And they're not paying because they're not being chased, or they're not being chased appropriately. So this is where we use data heavily. And a lot of the time, our clients' data itself is to help segment those customers, but also use some third-party data. So we can use third-party data where we can see if an individual, for example, you, James, you're paying every bill you receive, but you're just not paying the water bill, or you're not just paying the energy bill or the telephone bill that we're seeing for our clients. What that normally indicates is two things. One is there's a process breakdown at our clients where things are not being chased effectively, or you've got a problem with that customer, which is why you're not paying. So there could be an underlying issue or a complaint that's not being addressed. I was thinking,
I might be annoyed about something, or I have a complaint that's not being addressed, or maybe I haven't seen the bill, I haven't received it, or maybe if it's been sent by email, I missed it, or that sort of thing. Yeah. Or it went into my company junk or something. That can happen. So sometimes it's not because choosing not to pay, you just don't know it's there.
Yeah. So often our clients are worried about customer experience and complaints off the back of being chased, etc. But I think they're pleasantly surprised when we work with them and segment their data and reach out to customers, and the amount of customers that pay.
So they're worried that you might go chasing these individuals that haven't paid and upset them.
Yes.
So how do you make sure you don't upset them? Because obviously that you want to have, if possible, a fair and equitable outcome for everybody here.
Yeah. We do that through the customer communication itself. So we're mindful of the way we're communicating with customers. We also tailor that communication in a way that gets that engagement. And we've always said to our clients, don't be afraid to apologise. So it might be we haven't got in touch with you about your bill, or it may be that you might not have received your bill. So be engaging as opposed to going in straight with, you haven't paid your bill and you need to pay it now. And we also do it through outbound dialing, so calling customers and making sure that the teams are coached and trained to handle those calls effectively. But more importantly, if the customer has an issue, to listen to that issue, take ownership, address the issue, and then take payment. And often that goes amiss. So you'll have agents asking for the money, the client saying, I've got an issue, and you can see the clashing going on.
And doesn't go any further.
And doesn't go any further. So they're not paying.
So you've got to empower the agent then in that sense.
Yeah. And it's done.
So how do you do that?
So it's through coaching, training, giving them their remit, making sure they're really clear about the conversation, making sure they're human in their interaction, not
So you start with data, but then you're ending up with
the human interaction and systems. Yeah. So we're training them how to interact with the system, to have a look at when that bill was sent and how much was it, and has the customer contacted them, so they can quickly get a profile and then engage with you. And we've got a huge success rate. We can have an uplift of 30 to 40% in a month on collection rates. And these are large businesses with large debts. You can imagine that is multiple millions of pounds.
And this is through going through this process and reaching out to the customers in new and different ways.
Yeah.
Or in fact, just reaching out. Because
reaching out in some cases. But then the other thing is not reaching out once and hoping the customers will react, because customers don't do that.
No.
Some customers...
Well, it's like making sales in a way, isn't it? At the other end.
Yeah.
You have to keep going.
Yeah, you do. And something we always say is really important is making sure that you do what you say. So if I say I'm going to call you tomorrow morning, call you tomorrow morning, because otherwise you're training the customer to behave in a way that they shouldn't, which is not to keep to promises, and you're not keeping to your promise. So it may be that you agree to call tomorrow and the customer might not answer. You need to diarise and keep going, and then use other mechanisms. So if I've got your phone number, I can't get hold of you, I can send you an SMS. If you don't respond to the SMS, then I'll send you a letter. If you don't respond to the letter, that's where it then escalates into debt collection agency. You can affect your credit rating, etc. So we ask for the journey to be explained to that customer, but in a really nice, customer engaging way.
Okay. So Anita, you started this business, Sagacity, I think 20 years ago now. Yeah. What was your first sort of insight or project? How did you get started? I mean, I don't think it was debt collection, was it? Or was it?
It was implementing a system, actually, for debt collection.
Implementing a system.
Yeah.
So talk me through that, your first customer, and why you decided to start in business with a couple of partners, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started life actually in investment banking on the credit side and analysis for the energy sector. So BP, Shell, those
so you were evaluating these big businesses, seeing if their share price was likely to go up or down.
Yeah, and they're lending with the bank, investment banking. So,
so you were lending them lots of money.
Yeah, billions.
Billions
to these companies.
And you had to decide
at the age of
the price.
21.
21.
At the age of 21.
How did you get that job?
I have no idea.
Well, good for you.
How did I get that job? Actually, a friend put in the application for me, because I never thought I'd get that job. But yeah, one interview I'll never forget, actually, in my life. It was so intense.
Why was that?
Well, to get these roles.
Why was it? What was intense about it?
Intense. Just the interview starting at 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 at night, full on. Different scenarios, financial tests, English, literacy, accountancy, a set of accounts put in front of me that I'd never read, and then to present to a team.
So you had a whole day of...
intense interview. Yeah. I remember at one point thinking I was going to walk out because I just thought it was awful. I couldn't cope with it.
Right.
In fact, I remember calling my father about
during the day.
Yeah, during the day quickly to say, I think I'm going to leave. And the best thing he ever said to me was, if you leave, you haven't got the job. If you stay, you may have the job. So
that was good advice.
That was good advice. Yeah. So I stayed, and they phoned me the next morning to say I'd got the job on the top grade and I'd done really well.
And you were surprised?
I was surprised. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Why do you think you got that so wrong?
I don't know. I just
it's
think
interesting,
the pressure.
Isn't it? Sometimes really hard to tell what's going on.
Yeah, I think it was just the pressure and the intensity.
Well, you're also performing in a way. And
and you're 21 years old.
Yeah.
So, now you think of it differently. But then it was just intense questions, my first experience. So I did that for 3 or 4 years. And then I decided it wasn't for me. It was very male, stale, pale investment banking around me.
You're allowed to say that, Anita.
Yes, I am. I always break rules.
Clearly, yeah. Right. I'll let you have that one. I should normally counter it, but go on. So you didn't. You felt it was time to move.
And I think I was the only female and only non-white person.
Really?
in the bank across that whole floor.
Right. But was that, I'm asking you this genuinely, was that a motivation for leaving?
No.
It wasn't. So you observed that, but that wasn't why you left.
No, it wasn't why I left, but I observed it to think, is this for me?
Right.
You know, really given this environment, it was quite structured and staid and, you know, wasn't really fast paced in any way. Everything was too methodical. And it was a great experience. And I know why it had to be like that, because you're dealing with billions of pounds with large
it's just a different culture,
companies.
I suppose.
But the culture...
Business culture,
the business culture made me leave because I couldn't see...
I wouldn't personally be drawn to that either as a culture.
Yeah, so I just thought that's really not for me. So I went another extreme and joined a company called 1-to-1 at the time, which was a mobile telephone business that nobody had really heard of within the M25. And I think everyone thought I was mad going from an investment banking environment, really hard to get into.
And probably very well paid.
Yeah, very well paid. In fact, I think I was paid probably what graduates get paid today, 30-something years on.
Right.
So I was very, very well paid. And then decided to go and join this company called 1-to-1 that no one had heard of. And I remember people saying, why would anyone want a mobile phone? Why are you joining a mobile phone business? Because nobody really had mobile phone other than a few businesses had mobile phones.
They were car phones, weren't they?
Yeah. And I loved the campaign that they launched with, which was a phone every day for everyone. And they were saying that they were going to get the mobile phone into the mass market. And I think, you know, that was just a brilliant point in my career, because I joined the company really early on and watched it grow to millions of customers and got the opportunity to work in lots of different areas. So I then thought, actually, it'd be good to go and do something different. And I joined another startup company, which was a European broadband-based company. It was quite high risk, and it was interesting because...
But you're moving from banking into technology here, aren't you?
Yeah, so I moved into telecoms, and then this was broadband, you know, moving another stage, because that wasn't...
That was new.
That was new. That company folded 6 months later. And
not all startups succeed.
No, they don't.
An important truth, isn't it?
Yeah. And
in fact, most don't.
Yeah, most don't. And that was an interesting moment, because I could see quite a lot of tears in the room, and I was really excited that everyone, just not everyone, but me, I'd been made redundant. And
you were excited.
I was excited by
Explain.
that. Because I thought, actually, I could go and set something up now, and it's going to force me to do it.
Right.
So that's why I was excited suddenly.
So this was going to make you embrace the next chapter.
Yeah. So I decided that I wasn't going to take a permanent job, and I was actually going to go and set up on my own, which I did for 6 years pre-Sagacity. So
what was doing, and so that was as a consultant?
Yeah, so as an independent consultant. And
what were you consulting
My
on?
first contract was Virgin Mobile, consulting on a debt challenge they had, and they had no debt system to manage it.
I see.
And then that's where the ideas started generating into, we could do something more with this. And that's when Harry and Malka...
so they're your business partners?
Yeah. So Harry's my brother, Malka's my best friend.
Right. So that's interesting. You brought family and best friend.
Yeah.
It's quite high risk, that, isn't it?
Well...
If you all fell out, you don't have a friend or a well, obviously you haven't.
Yeah,
I'm saying obviously, so I hope you haven't.
Yeah, quite a lot of people had said that. In fact, my accountant was really nervous about it at the time, and said, look, Anita, you're doing quite well, and, you know, is this the right thing? He's a good friend of mine even today. And he has said that your journey's been amazing, because still my best friend. In fact, even more of a best friend. And Harry's my brother and also a friend. So
that's worked out well. So may I ask, whether you were third? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, so that's what I decided at the time, was that we
Did
set
they
up
invest
Sagacity.
money in it as well? Or?
No. We just decided that we would set up Sagacity, and it would be a third. And I think that's, you know, really good way of doing things, because I think a lot of business people that I
talk to or businesses fail, they don't have that attitude. They think either pay into it or this, whereas I'm a great believer there's enough for everybody. And actually, if you share that, then...
No, this is really interesting. I had another guest here who had a business partner. I said, what about a triumvirate, as I called it, with 3, like you've described? And he thought that wouldn't work. So you're living proof that it has. I'll send him the episode. So how do you work together, those 3? I mean, obviously 3 co-owners, but what are your different sort of specialisms or responsibilities?
So now or early on?
Well, when you began, how did you?
When we began,
who did what?
Yeah, we worked as a team, and we've got very different skill sets, and we recognise that, and we use each other.
All right, so
depending on the
talk
skills.
me through each person what the skill sets are.
So Malka is very operational, process and delivery focused. So very operational and really good at that. Shaping something from nothing in order to make it executable. She's excellent on that. Harry's very analytical. So business cases, analysis, data. He's that. And then there's me.
What did you do?
My skills are really around the stakeholdering, the selling, the engagement with clients.
Customer facing.
Very customer facing. I mean, we're all customer facing.
So who looks after the finance side of it?
Harry.
So he's data, and then you're the sort of front. You go out and open the doors and get
really
the
early
contracts, and then they'll come behind you to deliver them.
Yeah. So that was very early on.
That was how it works at the beginning.
Yeah, and then we all got involved in recruitment, and we all got involved with.
There are 3 of you at the beginning, and then you hire a 4th person.
Yeah.
So the first person between. How did you agree on who to hire?
Well, we had a need on one of the contracts we'd won, and it was around technology and data, because what we're doing is, if we're helping clients in the debt space, which is what the Virgin contract, and that was one of our contracts with Sagacity as well, as just
they're a long-standing customer.
They were a long-standing customer. Was that data and technology, and we'd worked with a couple of guys historically, and they're still with us today. So those 2 joined the business as independent contractors. So we were all contractors rather than employees. Right. So it de-risked anything early on. And we ran that model actually for a little while in the business before we started bringing employees on. Yeah. But it was the assignment.
Well, so it's project-based work, wasn't it, I suppose?
At the time, Yeah. So that's how, I guess, the journey.
So how many people do you have today?
Nearly 200.
200
people, yeah.
What advice would you give to someone thinking of starting up now? If you're thinking of starting a business today, what top 5 things should you be thinking about, Anita?
Firstly, just do it. Don't overthink it. If you've got an idea.
Because
I think the problem is people would like to have their own business, don't have the idea. And that's where I think it sometimes goes wrong, and they almost dwell on that for years. But actually, if you've got an idea.
So what was your first idea?
So my first idea was to go and be better than other consultancies and give proper practical advice, which was what the Virgin contract was about.
So you would like to be measured by your sort of results in that sense? Yeah,
make it measurable.
So, okay, so you've got an idea. So what else do you need? So get on with it. What else?
Yeah, so I think having the idea and not overthink it. Secondly, relationships. So surround yourself by good people and people you know and can trust.
And you couldn't have done better than your best friend and your brother, I suppose, in that respect.
Exactly. Know
and trust.
Yeah, trust. Thirdly, build that engagement and rapport with clients. Yeah, so identify who your clients are likely to be and go and talk to them and see what they need.
How do you get in front of them?
So using your network. So I would say everybody has a network, and sometimes they don't realise they have a network. And what I mean by that is Could be a next door neighbour. Yeah, it could be a relative. It could be somebody from your previous employment if you were employed. So use your network and people you know to help you. And people are willing to help. I mean, I have people starting businesses now, and I'm always willing to help them or introduce them to our advisors or people I know. Or
sure.
So I'd say
part of it's just knowing what they want or asking, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think that's really important. I think the fourth thing is to deliver on what you say. So build that reputation.
You've said that more than once.
Yeah.
Doing what you promise.
Yeah, do what you promise, I think, is really, really key. We are known and have a really strong reputation for very good delivery. You were listening to a video earlier from Synergy Bank, Paul Trotter. And
so what have you done for Synergy Bank?
So Synergy Bank, we've done a variety of transformation programs, really helping them with new applications like the mobile app, or building or understanding what they need to build.
So you help them build a mobile app for their banking service.
Yeah. So it's helping project manage or do some analysis or help with the tech in some cases. So it's really helping businesses in that space. So delivery is absolutely key. And then the fifth thing is billing and collections, making sure you've got the money in the business. Don't overexpose yourself too quickly. So keeping an eye on the finances. And actually, one of the strong advice I'd say is where businesses fail, where there's more than one person involved, is over the finances. And I think...
What do you mean?
So somebody might start saying, well, I've done more hours than you, or I deserve more of the share of this, or things haven't been billed properly. So it can happen from a relationship point of view, or it can happen from a transactional point of view. And I'd say make somebody accountable for the money. So with us three, Harry was key in leading that and trusting that and making sure that that's happened. Of course, you have governance checks and balances, but just treat each other fairly. And then I think that's a key recipe for success. Most businesses that fail that I talk to or aren't progressing, there's always some issue around money, generally. Odd ones we talk to where
the obvious one would be they haven't got enough income, I suppose. But I suppose you're saying it's beyond that. It's how it's administered.
It's how it's administered and managed, yeah.
That's what you see, invariably.
Yeah. See that, where we see businesses fail or business owners I've spoken to. But having enough money, again, I think there's various ways to run a business and de-risk some of the money needs. It's almost like you need to sell a bit before you grow. And that's how we started, actually. We would never go and overstretch ourselves. We only employed people when we had the money to employ them.
Right. So do you borrow money? Do you have debt in your business? Or?
We do today, but we didn't sort of say 5 years before that. So 15 years we ran the business with no debt, and we were cash rich as an organisation because we were very, I guess, astute with how we ran that. And not to get caught up in some of the things you can, everyone's always giving you great ideas to bring in this third party and bring in this system and bring in that into your organisation. And before you know it, you get caught up into it and you can spend a lot of money, which I think can be a waste. And I think the key there is to choose the right investor. So
that's interesting because you obviously, as a triumvirate, you've sold some of your shares so there are now 4 of you involved. Is that right?
Yeah.
How did that work as a decision-making process? You obviously didn't sell the whole company. You've decided. Talk me through that.
We kept a proportion between the 3 of us, but I think we got the company to a stage where we recognised that in order to grow, we needed fresh ideas, different type of investment into the business. So, if we're buying a business, it's multiple £1 million we need. So we wanted to de-risk ourselves by bringing in an investment company. And I must admit, I think we took quite a lot of time trying to work through type of investor we needed.
Did you speak to a few people?
Yeah, we spoke to a lot of people.
It was an elaborate courtship process here, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You spoke to a lot of people.
Yeah, we did. We spoke to
So what were you looking for in that?
So the biggest thing we were looking for is a company that's culturally aligned to us. So the way that they operate and we operate,
how could you tell?
They understood us. Through the interactions we were having, they were understanding our products, they were understanding us.
So how would you describe your culture?
So our cultures, it's very fair, it's open, it's honest, it's fast moving, it's wanting to get on with stuff. So we didn't want to have a partner that took forever making decisions. We didn't want a partner that didn't
so can-do culture.
Yeah, a can-do culture, but also that listened. So a lot of investment houses are very spreadsheet driven and nothing else, whereas they were demonstrating whilst the spreadsheet's important, so are people and supporting founders in a business. So that's their real ethos, which we've been living through for 3 years. So when things in business, as you know, they don't always go the way you plan. So sometimes we know that. Yeah. So they go the way you plan sometimes.
They go the way they go. You have to keep going.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't. And what we found with those guys, and we had those open conversations at the beginning, is they've supported us through that rather than feel they can beat you up because you haven't met this number, etc.
Yeah.
So
they feel like partners, do they?
Yeah, they do. And I think that's really important because sometimes people go into these relationships with investors because they're desperate for the money. So we weren't desperate for the money because we were cash rich. We wanted more the capability, the ideas, the growth story and strategy. So I think...
So if someone who's grown a business was thinking of seeking an investor, what you said look for cultural match. Is there anything else they should look for?
The reason I say cultural match is key, or was for us. Prior to that, we had a small investor engaged with Sagacity, and they were just not a cultural match, and that made it really difficult and made us not enjoy our job for a period. And it was...
How did that manifest itself?
That was more in terms of...
What were they doing that made you not enjoy your job?
Continually on the numbers, you've missed this, and it's that beating up type feel continues without understanding any reason, rationale. And you all know, James, in business, the economy changes, clients change.
You win some, you lose some, it goes up, it goes down.
Over
the long view, you want to be going forwards and improving.
Exactly. So as long as you've got that longer term, so they just didn't fit with us culturally, but QPE did, and that's why we spent a lot of time. And I think if you can get the people element right, like I said throughout, really, if you can get the people element right with clients during sales, with clients during engagement, with investors, the rest kind of flows because you can work together, providing you've got half a brain cell and a product and a service that sells. Then I think you get through it.
But is there an expectation from a private equity investor that you've got to sell the business at some point because they want their payday, don't they?
Yeah, so there's normally, a 3 to 5 year cycle with investors. And then if the growth strategy's been achieved, then obviously they get greater multiples and so do we.
Yeah. So that's a sort of part of the expectation or shared goal.
Yeah.
But people going into an arrangement like this need to understand that. You can't stay in there indefinitely necessarily. I suppose some private equities sell to other private equities, don't they? They they do that.
Or trade or... Yeah. And then that part of the strategy is agreed and, have regular board meetings where we can have those sensible conversations.
You've mentioned the people aspect of this quite a lot. And I want to ask you, when you recruit people, this is my favourite subject, what do you look for in terms of building your team? Because you built a team from where you originally hired 2 people to join. Well, you didn't hire them, you persuaded them to join you and start a business. And you've built a team of 200. What are you looking for in the people you hire? Yeah.
One of the biggest things we're looking for is their value set. So what is their value set in terms of their attitude to work, their attitude to customers, their attitude to the product or service you're selling. You know, how much research have they done? How much have they looked into it? How much do they really want the job? That cultural fit, again, as well, is really, really important, because they've got to fit into the teams and make sure they embrace the culture that we've built as an organisation.
How do you identify someone's values? That's quite hard, isn't it?
No, I think you can extrapolate and understand some of that through some of the questions. Do
you ask them directly, or what do you ask them?
Well, it's just sometimes through questioning. So you might say, talk me through where you've had a really difficult situation. What's that difficult situation been? And you can see, how did they overcome it? And you can often see their value set. Sometimes you'll see people go, oh, this, and you can see that, probably not the value set we want because of what they've just said. The outcome of that issue was. And then sometimes you kind of think, well, they handled that really maturely and they've dealt with it in an appropriate manner. That's a really good example. So
they tell me about a time when type question.
Yeah. And I think that draws out quite a lot. And I think in our questioning, they're probably not standard, give me your strengths, weakness, what have you done here? It's trying to understand them more. A question like, how would you be described down the pub? What do you just not like? And I always give an example. I say, I don't like sitting in front of a spreadsheet, but I love seeing the output of one. Right. So I say, look, it's okay to say what you don't like and what you like. Because,
so you ask them what they don't like?
Yeah, I ask them what they don't like. And I say that's really important to us because we have so many different roles that we can adjust a role to what you
I suppose
like.
A lot of people ask that question and think, I better be careful what I say. But you want to hear what they don't like so you can make sure they're in the right
Yeah, and we explain that. So I say, look, and part of the role is this. And if you say you don't like that part, we can remove that part and actually focus on the bit you like. Because I'm a great believer that people will excel in something they like, as opposed to many organisations will spend time training people in what they're not good at and what they don't like.
Yes. No, I agree with you. I mean, there was so much more energy unleashed if people are doing things that they like. I suppose listening to that, I'm thinking, well, I suppose, do I want someone to understand me better or not? You're saying I know whether you want to get an SMS or whether you'd like to get the post. Is that helpful or is that threatening? Because there's so much data, you said it can take you in infinite directions. And some people are worried about these big companies having all this data and other people feel that maybe it'll enable them to get a better service. Well,
if you remember,
how can you reassure me, Anita?
Well, one of the things I said early on is we will only use fully permissioned data and we will use it for the purposes that data's been permissioned for. So each data attribute in the company has a tag, what we can use it for. So if we have data on you, for example, James, it might be we can only use it to market something to you, but we can't use it for debt collection.
Right.
Or it might be we can only use it for debt collection, but we can't use it for marketing. So each data has to be marked, but it's fully permissioned in the sense that you've given permission for that data to be used.
But how do I give permission for my data to be used for debt collection?
So...
Because if I knew that, I might not.
Yeah. So, for example, sign up to Sky, for example.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
And in their terms and conditions will be that they have the right to send your data for debt collection if you don't pay. So most contracts will have that in there.
And because I've said that once, that applies.
That then applies for Sky to use that data.
But just for Sky.
Just for Sky.
So people who are doing this should be aware that that's what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's important if you've got a concern.
And you can always go back to that data. So if you can't remember and you say, right, I've now received this from Boots, for example. So all these are clients of ours. Boots, Tesco's, the AA I've mentioned. So we've got over 350 brands that we work with.
Right.
So
communicating we're communicating with millions of people every day.
Yeah, we are. Our data's out there. So you could then come back and say, well, where did I permission this? And we've got that detail as to where it was permissioned.
So if I was to ask that, you'd be able to tell me.
Yeah.
And now I like asking these two questions that ask everybody. I'm going to ask you. And the first question is, what gets you up on a Monday morning, Anita?
I think the fascinating stuff we do with data with our clients, that's what gets me up.
So you just want to look at the next data set?
I want to look at the next thing that we found, we've identified, just the excitement that our teams and myself come from that. Probably shows huge passion for making that data workable for clients. So I guess I love my job and I love the company, and that's what gets me up on a Monday morning.
I can see that. Thank you for that. And the last question is a question from my interview book. You've mentioned some of the questions you like to ask. This is one of our fateful 15, so it's a classic interview question that people get asked often, which is, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
I could see myself advising businesses, smaller businesses, and I could see myself helping young children that don't enjoy school but to become entrepreneurs.
Interesting.
Because I think there's a big link there.
No, I mean, a lot of the entrepreneurs I've spoken to didn't go to university and didn't perform particularly well at school.
Yeah, I think there's a link.
Yeah. So I wish you well with that.
So that's
Keep
what I'd
encouraging
like to
them, Anita. Yeah. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, James.
Thank you. I enjoyed that very much.